Hello everyone, it's Jeff. A couple of years ago, I was fortunate enough to be interviewed by Chrystal Rae about my art. I really liked the interview because it has a lot of really good energy about both my art, and it gives a really good history of how I got to what I'm doing and my art history in general as well. So anyway, with a few little edits, I added a few new things, new art to it. But other than that, here's that interview from about a year and a half to 2 years ago with Chrystal Rae.
Well, I'm glad to see you here, meet you again. So tell me a little bit about your art, Jeff. Tell me what inspired this great art that you're doing.
I originally went to college for a whole different reason than art, but somewhere along that trail, I started doing more and more art and found it to be my home. And I started doing very early on, way back in the 80s, computer-mediated art. And that's what it was called back then. And you had to be a scientist. You had to learn programming. You had to wake up at 3 in the morning and go down to the computer lab.
Oh, wow.
Because artists weren't people that used computers.
Right.
So they didn't
So
have
you were
time
ahead
for
of
us.
your time, it sounds like.
Yes,
In that time
I
frame
think
in
we were.
particular, because you actually had to know coding and all those
Yes,
things to
yes.
be able to do the type of art that you did, which is these beautiful graphics, right? Like,
Correct, yeah.
tell me a little bit about it.
I combined silkscreen or serigraphs with computer-mediated imagery, and what it ended up at the grad show I had for that, because I stuck on to go through grad school because this problem was in front of me and I wanted to solve it, were giant room-sized prints of portraits, basically. And I was fortunate enough the year after I graduated from grad school and finished my thesis was one of my pieces ran in a 5-city show across the country, and it was called Computer Mediated Art. So there wasn't very much computer-aided art even out there. The commercial arts and those fields hadn't even touched it yet.
Wow, wow.
So yeah, it was pretty interesting.
So tell me how's it evolved then? How's your art evolved?
When I graduated from college, and my mind's eye was I was going to be a photographer, and I ended up in graphics instead. And a few years after I started in graphics, the old manual methods, the computers, the Apple computers and other computers came into play, and we started doing graphics there. And I saw a path to take my computer-mediated graphics art into these and Apples and Macs and things, and became using things like Photoshop and things like that. So I started with some geometry and did these intricate designs in geometry, and then decided I needed a subject matter that was completely opposite. So I was making art from the left side of the mind, in other words, math, and I wanted to join it with more organic and things that would not normally fall into place with when I brought up I do geometric art. In the human form, I'm a sculptor and a painter as well, and I've done many portraits and things in sculpture, where I thought if
Just
I can
as a
only
side note,
combine...
I do love your pebble sculptures.
Yes, that's one of my new lines right now. I'm right in the middle of developing a whole series of those.
I love those. But I know we're here to talk about your graphics, so continue on.
So anyway, that does kind of fall into place, because if you think about pixelizing an image, if you do it in the real world, you're pixelizing with something else, and I'm using stones.
Ah, got it.
So if you think about it, it works very similar. It's got the same thread of logic in it.
So that's why you were attracted to that.
I think so, because a lot of the early stuff I did with the graphics or our digital art was really about pixels and what the pixels were made of and where they were, and did you actually see what you're looking at or did you not? Because in a lot of times I would camouflage the images, make them look like tree leaves instead of pixels or something like that.
Wow.
So when you go flash forward to what the process is now, now I'm following more of a geometric pattern, and what can I put on that geometric pattern that the viewer has to kind of discover.
Right, and it's almost like a mandala, right?
Exactly.
I love it. It's like, it's so hypnotic. It's like a mandala, and then all of a sudden you recognize, whoa, that's a female body.
I'm trying to find that edge where, okay, it's just a pattern or a geometric mandala, or what is it when you really start to stare at it? And it's
and there's nothing more beautiful than a female body.
Well, of course not.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great subject matter, and then the way that you make it work into mandala makes it really intelligent and thought-provoking and you know, very sensual at the same time.
My last two series, one was using a ballerina, and those really worked out well because you can transpose a known shape over and over again of a ballerina in a ballerina pose. And the next logical step after just doing the mandala series was yoga mandalas.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's where we are today. So yeah, I've kind of come full circle. It's kind of like following a rabbit hole. You do one and you go, what if I adjusted this? What if I changed the ratio of this number to that number? What if the angles changed slightly? What if I just took this image and rotated it 180 degrees? And I
You're looking at something way more interesting.
Lots of people say so. And then the
and yet the first image you see, this mandala, is very classy and elegant and holds the space all on its own.
Yes, and I think that's what's interesting about it is in some cases they seem very intimate, and that's really key as well. Then your mind is going, wait a minute, this is a different world than I expected to see.
Exactly, yes, a different world is a great way to put it. It's like you think you're coming into one world and you recognize, whoa, I'm in another realm.
Exactly, and I like watching people looking at them, and when it kind of hits them, oh my goodness, this is what I'm looking at, and you'll get different responses, but mostly people seem to be mesmerized. I think is a good word. They'll be looking at the pattern. And so I find that kind of like the sweet spot. If we can still keep that kind of a pleasant surprise.
Lovely. So last question, Jeff. What does the future hold for you?
Well, I have lots of those rabbit holes to follow, lots of ideas. I change color, I make color dominant, or I make color subtle.
So you're going to stay with the same series, you're enjoying this series, and you're just going to let it evolve?
You know what's interesting about it, every model you work with or series of models that you put together kind of develops its own rules and formulas.
Oh, that's true.
So I have some models that were very structured, and their poses were very stiff, and I didn't think they'd be very useful until I started messing with them. The other models that were very fluid, exactly, that's a perfect word. Those work too, but in a completely different direction than I would have guessed.
So you're going to stay with the series and just let it evolve, it sounds like.
Yes, well, like I said,
it's exciting. It's an exciting series. I think there's so much to explore there. Yeah.
Exactly, and with modern computers, the storage power of the computers, the processing speeds and stuff, the images can get quite large and stay very detailed.
So, Jeff, how can somebody find out more about your art? Where can we go to see this, or maybe even buy it?
Well, I have art online. So a quick word, the video was done just before I got my new webpage up and running, so if you want to see any of this art, please go to www.geoformphotography.com. I'll have it in the notes below the video so you can click on it and go right to the page. Have a good evening, and